Welcome everyone to the Software Architecture White Robe Community Update for December 2023. So the SOAR team is an internal team at SSW, and we've been tasked with providing architectural guidance along with maintaining a clean architecture template. And that guidance is applicable for both our developers internally and for the general community as well. So in the update this month, we're going to run through all of the good work that the team has been doing since our last update. Okay, so first of all, team introductions, the people we've got on the call today. So firstly, my name is Daniel Mackay. I'm a solution architect here at SSW. We also have with us William.
Hello, everybody. I'm also a solution architect here. I'm based out of Melbourne, and I've been working pretty closely with both Daniel and Chris and others on this clean architecture template. Been a lot of fun.
Awesome. And we also have Chris.
Hey guys, I'm Chris, solution architect at SSW, and also based in Melbourne. Can't wait to show you guys what update we have in here.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. All right. Okay, the agenda for today. So this is what we're gonna cover for December's update. So first of all is the .NET 8 superpowers that William and I have been running recently. Then we're going to look at some updates to our clean architecture template. So probably the big one is the upgrade to .NET now that has gone GA. We've also done some updates to our code to use primary constructors, and we're going to cover why that's good, but also some things to look out for as well. Integration test improvements. So these are some ways that we've improved our automated testing within the template. The release 0.7.0 we released, I think, a week or two ago. So we'll cover what's in that, and also the Northwind 365 upgrade. So we'll talk about what that is and what's happened there. All right. So first up, we have the .NET 8 Superpowers Tour. William, I'll hand over to you, mate.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so we've been jumping up and down the east coast of Australia, teaching a whole lot of developers about all the new things in .NET 8, but also just some of the general stuff in .NET with C# and ASP.NET, Blazor. We've introduced cloud native development as well, now that we have Aspire, as well as Dapper, two really good options for cloud development, especially when you're talking about microservices or distributed applications. We're talking about stuff like source generators, all the different ways of communicating between applications. So there's gRPC, there's SignalR, there's GraphQL, minimal APIs. Obviously, is a very big one, and we focus on that. And a whole lot of new updates that have come to Entity Framework when we're dealing with our data and databases. And also, yeah, there's some good guidance about actually migrating your applications from other versions, legacy applications, to the modern .NET 8 as well. So there's a lot of options there, and we go through some of those in detail. And I think the next the next event is tomorrow in Sydney, where we'll be doing that for a fairly big in-person and online crowd. So there's still time. If you've seen this video before tomorrow, make sure you click that button and join in the fun.
Awesome. And this round of the superpower that we've been doing, William, is a one-day version. Are we looking to do any perhaps longer versions later on down the track?
That's a good question. I think the answer should be yes.
Awesome.
It's in the works, so yeah, date pending.
Cool. Thank you, William. All right, Chris, do you want to tell us about the .NET upgrade and the template?
Sure. So one of the key things that we update in the clean architecture template is we upgrade from .NET 7 to .NET 8. And this is a very important move because what we want is to get out from the short-term support of .NET 7, because Microsoft only supports like up to 2 years since it was released. Now, .NET 8 is a LTS, so it's a long-term support. It has a 3 years of maintenance from Microsoft, which is what we want anyway in all of our projects. Also comes with .NET 8 is also a huge performance improvement, because mainly, apart from the couple of nice features like exception handling, .NET 8 also have a huge performance improvement. Like, we have a lot of update in performance. So, Daniel, if you can go to the next slide, we do have this is comparisons of how many performance related changes that the .NET team have added in each .NET version. As you can see, the .NET 8 have the most performant release. Like, we have a lot of changes in performance related improvements, and we do have a couple of benchmarks here as well. And .NET 8, as you can see, the JSON based performance is up to 18% more performance than .NET 7, and on the Fortunes test, we'll also have a more 24% faster performance than the .NET 7. So, so I think it's a good move if you have a .NET 7 project. So I think it's a good move if you want to move to .NET 8 because it's all the good things are baked in there. And yeah.
So what's the difference between the JSON benchmark and the Fortunes benchmark?
So I think the JSON benchmark just purely focused on raw performance of the .NET itself, while the Fortunes actually mimic more of the real-time use case scenario. Because normally when you do benchmark, it's not always you have like a, let's say, high complex performance, intensive performance task, where in normal use case you have a various throughput. So now these Fortunes, we can see from the Fortunes test, is actually mimic closely to what your server performance will be in a real world scenario.
Yeah,
in a real world scenario. Cool.
Yeah. So one thing I'd like to point out there is the on the JSON test, you can see it's like 1 million requests per second. That's pretty insane. But it's trying to just push the hardware or the networking side of things as high as possible. When we then look over to the Fortunes test, there's more logic, there's calls to a database and so forth. So definitely a bit more real world. And so then we drop down to about 325,000 RPS, which is still in itself super fast. Of course, using really awesome hardware to run these benchmarks, but just the percentage increase from the previous version to the next is simply amazing. So, free performance just from an upgrade. I like the sound of that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So moving on, another change we've made to our clean architecture template is to embrace the use of primary constructors. So the main reason for this is around just reducing the amount of boilerplate code we need to write and maintain in order to inject dependencies into our code. So if we have a look at the code sample on the left here, this is one of our command handlers in the template. So you can see all the code that we need there. We need to have a private field, we need to have a constructor, and then do an assignment within that constructor as well. So if we compare that to the code on the right, which is the new code using primary constructors, the code is a lot more concise, there's less to maintain, and we've got rid of a lot of that boilerplate. But a couple of notes on primary constructors. So there are some things to be aware of. I think there are a couple of caveats. So previously, things that are being injected in, quite often you will store those as fields, and it's pretty common for dependencies that get injected into your class, you'll store those as read-only fields. But with primary constructors, they're not fields, they're actually passed into the class as parameters. And the way that they're passed in, we're not actually able to decorate those with any read-only keywords. So that means that those things that used to be read-only are now actually mutable. So that's just something to be aware of. And yeah, like I mentioned, we kind of lose the ability to have this read-only behavior. So hopefully in subsequent versions of C#, this would be, I'd really like to see this feature introduced so we can actually control if these parameters are read-only, and maybe even public or private, similar to TypeScript. That would be cool. So another thing to point out with primary constructors is that they are not the same as record constructors. So as I mentioned before, with primary constructors, the parameters that passed in, they're treated as parameters. So if you were to write a function and you go this dot, because that parameter is not actually an instance member on that object, you're not going to find that off of the this keyword. But if we compare that to record constructors, by default, when we create a record, all of the properties that are passed in, or the fields that are passed to the constructor, by default, those are actually public properties. So with records, they're public properties. With primary constructors, they are private parameters. So there's a few big differences there. And the other thing is naming conventions. So I think, it's quite common for private variables or private fields, to have a little underscore at the start of the name in C#. But because we're changing from private fields to parameters, the convention is that underscore goes away. So, previously all of your code might have referred to something with the underscore at the front, and now that's not the case because it's a parameter. So that's just some little bit of weirdness to be aware of there. Right, the next change we're going to go through is a change to the way that we're handling integration tests within our clean architecture template. So previously, the main sort of type of tests that we promote within our template are what we call subcutaneous tests. So these tests are all about testing everything basically from the API down. So, we're testing API calls, we're testing serialization, we're testing database access. The only thing that we mock out is external dependencies. But previously, we were targeting the application layer. And there's some downsides of this. So any code that you've got in your web API layer, that's going to be skipped over and not tested if you're tested directly targeting your application layer. If you want to test your API routes to make sure that the correct route goes to the correct web API, you're not able to test that as well. And any authentication code that you may have in your API, that's not going to be tested as well. So what we've done is we've refactored our tests so that now, instead of targeting the application layer, our tests are targeting our API layer. The tests themselves, this was a pretty small change to make. The tests look kind of similar, but the benefit is that the web API code, any code in the web API layer, that is now indeed tested. The routes themselves are tested, and any auth code that you have in your web layer also gets tested. So without a huge amount of changes, we're just getting a lot more, a lot deeper or more comprehensive test, I would say, with every endpoint or feature that we're testing. All right, so I think last week, we released version 0.7.0 of our clean architecture template. So we've already covered a lot of the features that's contained in this template. Some extra ones that we haven't covered yet. We've got some slightly improved handling of how our workflows run for forked repos, but that's an area that we're still working on, and there'll be some more changes coming there as well. We've also changed how we manage our package references. So we're now using a thing that's called central package management to just make it easier to manage the same dependencies across multiple projects within our solution. We've done some other small changes about just changing the frequency of our CodeQL workflow, how often that runs, and also created a code of conduct for developers that might want to contribute to our repository. All right, so the last item to cover today is a big piece of work that we did on what we call Northwind 365. So this is a reference architecture that SSW has been created and maintaining. It's been around for a few years now, but it needed a bit of modernization, a bit of an upgrade. So what we've done is we've taken our Clean Architecture v2 template, and we've applied all of that into Northwind 365. So the benefit of seeing it in Northwind 365, it's more of a real-world application. It actually has a front end. It's got a lot more endpoints to show, some more real-world examples of how we would build out features. And it's also got identity and authentication in it as well, which our template doesn't have out of the box. So yeah, this was a reasonably big upgrade that we worked on for a while. So the main points, upgrading the structure to Clean Architecture v2, upgrading to .NET 8, of course. So Angular, I think that was on version 8 before. Now that's been upgraded to version 15. So some big changes there. And we also made a decision to swap out Identity Server for the new .NET 8 identity endpoints. And this was because Identity Server for this application, we have a front end, we have a web API, we didn't really need to use OAuth or OpenID Connect for that. It was a bit of an overkill solution. So we've opted to use the .NET 8 identity endpoints, which is a much simpler solution, and it's more fit for purpose for what we wanted to use it for. So if that's something that you're interested in checking out, you can find that at the URL here or scan the QR code as well. All right, and if you would like to see more on our clean architecture template, feel free to visit the repository on GitHub, which you can find from this QR code as well. We would love to hear your feedback. If you've got any feature suggestions, feel free to submit those. If you find any bugs or anything you would like to change or just would like to have a discussion about something, please feel free to reach out. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, you can also find our clean architecture template on NuGet as well. All right, so that's everything we wanted to cover in this month's update. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.